Have you ever wondered why bad things sometimes happen to good people? Or maybe you've been there yourself. You've prayed, you've tried to do the right thing, you've tried to live well, and yet you still face problems you never saw coming. It can feel confusing and unfair. Today, we are going to look at the life of a man named Job. We're not just going to talk about it as an old story, but as a practical guide for how to stay strong when life makes no sense. Job's life teaches us profound lessons about faith, patience, humility, and trusting God even when we can't possibly understand what's happening. By the end of this video, my hope is that you will discover powerful truths that can help you face your own challenges with renewed strength and a solid sense of hope. Let's start at the beginning. Who was Job? The scriptures introduce him as a man who was blameless and upright. He was a good man. He respected God and made a conscious effort to avoid evil. He was a loving father who cared deeply for his family, and he was known for being generous and kind to those around him. On top of that, Job was also incredibly successful. He had a large and loving family, a vast number of animals, many workers who depended on him, and great wealth. If you looked at his life from the outside, you'd think he had it all. It looked perfect, but this is where Job's story teaches us something crucial right from the start. Having a good character does not mean your life will always be easy. Sometimes, even the best people face the hardest seasons. It's a truth that can be difficult to accept, but understanding it prepares us for what life might bring. So, let's move into part 2, where everything changed for Job. In an incredibly short period, Job lost almost everything he held dear. His livestock, the source of his wealth, were stolen or destroyed. His loyal workers were attacked. And in the most devastating blow of all, his precious children died in a terrible disaster. As if that wasn't enough, he was then struck with a painful and debilitating illness that covered his entire body. Can you even begin to imagine that? Losing your family, your finances, your health, and your reputation all at once. The weight of that grief is almost unthinkable. Most people in that situation would become angry. They'd feel abandoned. Most people would blame God. Most people would probably just give up. But Job did something different. Now, this doesn't mean he wasn't in pain. He mourned deeply. He cried out. He tore his robes and sat in ashes, which were ancient signs of profound grief. But even in the depths of that unimaginable suffering, he still chose to respect God. And here we find our first powerful lesson. Faith is not just for the good times. In fact, true faith shows its real strength during the hard times. Having faith doesn't mean you'll never feel pain or sadness. It doesn't mean you won't grieve or ask questions. Faith means that you don't lose your foundation, even when the storms of life are shaking you to your core. Now, as Job was sitting in his sorrow, his 3 friends came to visit him. This brings us to a very relatable part of his story. When people don't understand your pain. At first, his friends did the right thing. They simply sat with him in silence for 7 days and 7 nights because they saw how great his suffering was. Sometimes, the most helpful thing we can do for someone who is hurting is to just be present. But after that, things took a turn. They started to speak, and their words were not helpful. They started to blame Job for his own suffering. They suggested that maybe he had committed some secret sin. Maybe he deserved what was happening. Maybe God was punishing him. They were trying to make sense of the senseless, but in doing so, they judged him and added to his pain. And the Bible makes it clear they were wrong. This teaches us a second powerful lesson. Not everyone will understand your struggle. People, even those with good intentions, will sometimes judge your situation without knowing the full story. They might offer simple answers for complex problems or speak when they really should just listen. Even your closest friends can sometimes say the wrong things when you are at your most vulnerable. And that is why your relationship with God has to be personal. It cannot be based on what other people think or say about your circumstances. You have to build your own connection, your own trust, independent of the opinions of others. This leads us to one of the most powerful parts of Job's story, his honest conversation with God. Job didn't just passively accept his fate. He questioned. He cried out. He expressed his confusion and his deep hurt directly to God. He wasn't disrespectful, but he was incredibly real. He did not pretend to be strong when he felt weak. He did not hide his pain or his doubts. He laid his heart bare before God, with all of its anguish and confusion. And this reveals our third incredible lesson. God can handle your honest emotions. It's okay to not be okay. You can pray when you are sad. You can pray when you are confused. You can bring your questions and your frustrations to God. He is not afraid of your reality. True faith is not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. Real faith is about staying connected to God even when everything feels like it's falling apart. It's about being honest in the relationship, knowing He is big enough to handle it. After Job and his friends went back and forth, and after Job poured out his heart, God finally spoke. This is a pivotal moment in the story, but what God said might surprise you. He didn't give Job a neat, tidy explanation for why everything had happened. He didn't provide a list of reasons for the suffering. Instead, God took Job on a verbal tour of creation. He asked Job questions about the universe, the stars, the animals, and the weather. He showed Job just how big, powerful, and infinitely wise he is. Through this, Job had a profound realization. There are things that we, as humans, simply cannot fully understand from our limited perspective. God's ways are higher and more complex than our minds can grasp. And this brings us to our fourth lesson. We don't need to understand everything to trust God. So often, we desperately want answers. We want to know why. But sometimes, what we really need is not an explanation, but a deeper sense of trust. It's like a small child holding their loving parent's hand while walking through a dark and unfamiliar place. The child doesn't understand everything, but they trust the parent who is leading them. In the same way, we can trust our Heavenly Father, even when the path is dark. Finally, we come to the end of Job's ordeal, his restoration and new beginning. After Job humbled himself and prayed, even for the friends who had misjudged him, God restored his life. In fact, he was blessed with twice as much as he had before. He had a new family, more children, and he lived a long, full life. But let's be clear, the biggest victory was not the return of his wealth or possessions. The greatest victory was that Job kept his faith through the fire. The trial had tested him, but it had not broken his spirit or his trust in God. And our fifth and final lesson is this: hard seasons don't last forever. Pain is real, and we should never diminish it, but it is not always permanent. Difficult chapters in your life do not have to be the final chapter. In fact, they can often lead to stronger futures, deeper faith, and new beginnings you couldn't have imagined before. So what does Job's life teach us today, right where we are? It teaches us to stay faithful, even when life is hard. It reminds us that not everyone will understand our struggle, and that's okay. It gives us permission to be honest with God about our true feelings. It encourages us to trust God, even when we don't have all the answers. And it gives us hope that hard seasons can lead to new beginnings. If you are going through something difficult right now, please hear this. Your story is not over. Your current pain is not the end of your journey. Strength can and does grow from struggle. Keep believing, keep standing, keep trusting. If this message encouraged you today, please share it with someone who might need to hear a message of hope. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our future videos. Thank you for watching, and remember, even in the most difficult seasons, you are never alone.